Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Yes, it's episode 3, and I promise this is the last one that we're doing so far in advance. Sorry, I'm awkward and have way too many plans, so we had to whack out 3 of these more or less within a week. So, anyone who's got any questions or stuff, if we haven't answered them in the comments, please fire as many questions as you want into the comments for this episode, and we will get back to you ASAP. I am joined again, of course, by my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney.
Hi, everyone.
And today we are talking about what might be the worst film that we cover in quite a while on the film podcast. It's the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith. A bit of background on the film. It is Hitchcock's third film of the 40s, hence episode 3. It was a box office success, I would say predominantly because it had a pretty low budget. It grossed only like 100k less than Foreign Correspondent with a budget of about half of what Foreign Correspondent had. So, you know, if it's not expensive and it's making that kind of money, I see why Hitchcock did it. Hitchcock said that he did it as a favor to Carole Lombard, who is the most interesting part about any of this movie, and I'm not talking about her performance, I just mean her as a person. She's very interesting, but the files from RKO suggest otherwise. Apparently he was actually the one pushing for it the whole time, and he just kind of wanted to distance himself from this picture as much as he could. It's Hitchcock's only real slapstick comedy, his only like hard and fast comedy. I'll be honest, it's not my style of comedy. I don't find it particularly funny. There's the odd moment of humor in there, but like it's 95 minutes long. The odd moment of humor in a comedy is not what you're aiming for. It stars, of course, Carole Lombard, who was a legendary actress at the time. It's her last film before her untimely death on that plane crash with herself, her mother, and her husband Clark Gable's agent, or press agent, or press manager or something. The three of them, again, we're talking World War II times, so there's all these mad stories. It was something to do with the lights on the beacons for the pilots to be able to see where they were going were all turned off because they were fearing that they were going to get bombed by Japanese bomber planes. They turned off the beacons and the plane didn't know where it was going and unfortunately crashed. She did have films that released after this, but this was her last one that came out while she was still alive. It also stars Robert Montgomery in one of the least likable male performances in a Hitchcock film. God, I hate his character so much, and his performance doesn't do it much. Well, I'd say it doesn't do it much service, it's just bad anyway. And also we have our boy Gene Raymond, who's Jeff. Good for him. Shane, immediately, do you agree with me when I say that this is probably the worst film we'll cover in the first few episodes at least of the podcast?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely the worst Hitchcock film I've seen up to this point. I'm not just talking about what we've covered on the podcast. I'm talking about in general, and I've seen close to 20 films probably of his. By a distance, the worst film I've seen from Hitchcock. It's not funny. It's dragged out. The humour is kind of really mean-spirited at times, and it's hard to know who to root for. You just mentioned Gene Raymond. He's probably the most likeable character, and even towards the end, his character has moments where you find it really difficult to root for him or side with him. So there's very little to like about this in general.
Yeah, it's got some radio adaptations and theatre adaptations. I mistakenly said that the Brad Smith... I call him Brad Smith all the time, up the cherries. The Brad Pitt film was a remake of this. It's not. It's actually not. They're just remakes in the sense of the title. Same with the Donald Glover miniseries, or is it a series?
Well, it's a series. Yeah, they've had one season, and I really like the series. Actually, if anyone hasn't seen it, definitely check it out on Amazon Prime. The film is really good, but the series is terrific. Lots of great guest stars in there, populating each episode. So check it out. But yeah, it's completely different. They're plot wise, they're not the same ideas at all.
Yeah, I suppose we'll get into this dumpster fire. So it starts off straight away with this like whimsical music. So you know off the bat it's not your stereotypical Hitchcock film. And our protagonists, question mark, David and Anne Smith, are having a lock-in because they don't leave the bedroom until they've resolved an argument. And this time our wonderful, wonderful couple who we just love so much have been in their bedroom for 3 days because they are stubborn and hard to like. They have a record of 8 days though, so it's not their worst spat that they've had. And they get into the conversation of, well, Anne proposes the question of, if you were to go back in time, this is shortly after the bedroom scene, if we were to go back in time, would you marry me again? And David says no. And he can't figure out why she's annoyed at that. His answering is terrible as well. He literally says that men don't have as much freedom when they're married and he wishes he stayed single. But I love you. Idiot. Then we get a dude who's played by Charles Halton, who was the incredibly memorable Bradley in Foreign Correspondent. I'm sure you remember Bradley from Foreign Correspondent. Shane, can you tell me who Charles Halton plays in this film?
He plays Mr. Deaver.
Oh, I thought you were going to forget that because he's so memorable. And he tells David Smith that basically they messed up his marriage, as you do. They kind of said that they were married in one state, but in actuality, turns out that whole other side of the river is actually a part of another state, and it took them a solid 3 years to figure that out. So all the marriages that happened in that one place are null and void, which is great because, our boy David just told his ex-wife or never wife, I don't know, that he wouldn't remarry her. So I'm sure this is going to do wonders for her mental health. You know what else to do wonders for her mental health? David, our likable protagonist, just writing her maiden name over and over again. What's that about?
Yeah.
It's just a dick move. But he really saves it by asking her out to dinner. God, I'm sure that's going to go great. And then Mr. Deaver, Bradley from Foreign Correspondent, also goes to their house and tells Anne the same news. So, pretty simple. When they go out for dinner, Anne just wants him to say to her, listen, this Deaver fella told us that our marriage doesn't count, so we got to do that again. That's all she wants from him, so she's not going to say anything because communication in relationships in the 40s is dead. So it's basically a trust thing because, who wouldn't trust their husband of 3 years to just do this sort of stuff straight away as soon as they find out, oh, I don't know, maybe the wife of David Smith, the arsehole. Why don't you talk about what happens next, Shane, on this glorious date when they go to that absolute dump. What was it called?
Mama Lucy's.
Mama Lucy's, that's it.
Okay, and they're also, it's worth pointing out, they're also surprised to hear that years later, after they originally visited Mama Lucy's, that Mama Lucy is no longer there. I mean, wow, it's a turnover in staff. Who could have thunk it? But, so Anne, as Harry was saying, is just desperate for David to spill the beans about the null and voidness of the marriage, if that's a phrase. And when he arrived back at the apartment, he's still keeping stum. He's still trying to play a little game with Anne. She's getting more and more worked up about all this. And eventually, after giving him one too many chances to come clean, she just loses it. She starts throwing furniture. She basically throws him out of the apartment. He can't understand why she's so upset, which is crazy in and of itself. Again, setting up the whole fact that there's not a lot of... her reaction is understandable, apart from maybe the physicalness of it. Already you can kind of get the sense that neither of these protagonists are particularly worth investing in, shall we say.
Also, fun fact, it's one of the first ever pizzerias shown in film, Mama Lucy's.
Well, did not know that.
And yeah, so basically she's given our protagonist David the boot after he... Well, yeah, basically her whole thing was, okay, well, if he's not going to say it to me, and it's the 1940s, keep in mind, Please tell me he's not gonna, I don't know, try and swoon me into going to bed with him whilst we're not married, because that was a very taboo thing at the time. And yeah, no, he's right for it. He's trying to, as she said, use her like a squeezed lemon. Great expression. So yeah, she gives him the boot. He's kicked out, and this is where David meets our wonderful character Chuck. So he's been kicked out of his house, and he goes to this steam room sauna place where he bumps into Chuck, who he played golf with once. And Chuck, our other protagonist, who we all love, basically just says, David, listen, man. My wife left me and kicked me out because Chuck is a cool guy. What you gotta do is ignore her. So for the remainder of the film, David persists on stalking this woman. Every scene, it's even alluded to towards the end, that he had paid a taxi driver to let him sit in the back of his taxi for 4 days to follow her, just doing her everyday stuff and not actually like do anything. He was just stalking her, our protagonist.
Pretending that he was a PI as well.
Yeah, he lied to the guy and said he was a private investigator.
Adding another level of like
David Smith.
Creepiness, I suppose, to the whole charade.
Yeah, I don't know. There's stuff that's dated, and then there's a guy who is stalking his ex-wife.
Well, his wife that never was.
And using it as comedy?
Yeah, I know. The whole plot. Again, in better hands, I think in more subtle hands, a director could have gotten more out of this, but
Oh, yeah, I think like Frank Capra or William Wyler would have done better with this script for sure.
Yeah.
Hitchcock, in the same way he's not the master of romance, his comedy is better like as a sub genre. Comedy is not his thing.
his comedy is better when it's little small moments to alleviate tension or suspense or drama. When it
Yeah,
actually,
like our boy Rowley. Like
Yeah.
our boy Rowley from Foreign Correspondent.
exactly, yeah. When it's or Folio, even the moments in Folio, when
Yeah,
it's
true.
when it's kind of when he needs to rely in a whole film, like when he's basically making a comedy, he's just not good. He's not the right man for the job.
Yeah, so when our protagonist David Smith leaves the steam room to go stalk his wife, she's kind of doing well for herself. She's got herself a new job. She's still living in the apartment. She's going by her maiden name. And David, our protagonist, goes to her workplace, tries to get her fired, pushes her boss, gets her fired, gets the police called on them, gathers a crowd whilst he shouts at her outside her now former place of work, and then the policeman has to escort him away, our protagonist David Smith. So David then goes back to what was their shared apartment, which is now Anne's apartment, and Anne is lawyered up. She is lawyered up with none other than David's best mate Jeff, who in the scene prior was telling David, "Oh, we'll stick together, buddy." Next scene, he is already asking his wife on a date. Go on, Jeff. And essentially, Anne is like, "Yeah, Jeff is my lawyer. I'm gonna win whatever case you try and take against me if that's the route you go down. So don't even bother exercising those rights because I got Jeff." And in front of his best mate, Jeff then asks Anne on a date. At this point in time, Jeff is a baller. At this point in time. He fucking isn't by the end though.
He took his shot anyway. I'll give him that.
He took his shot and he hit a 3-pointer. So David goes back to this steam room where Ben, whose wives have kicked him out, all hang about, it seems. And our good friend Chuck is still there because he has nothing better to do than to just hang around this steam room and give terrible advice. So Chuck organizes this double date, and oh my god, they just so happen to go to the same place as Anne and Jeff on this double date. This double date is probably my least favorite part of the film other than the ending, because I don't I don't. It's about as mean spirited as the humor gets.
Yeah.
So it's alluded to that our protagonist David Smith's date is like unattractive because she eats her dinner. That's the joke. Don't you get it? All Hitchcock does is just put like some model next to her
Yeah.
who to accentuate the fact that she is eating her dinner. Because there's humor in that. I'm telling you, there is a joke and you should laugh. Yeah, I don't. It's just dumb. It's dated. It's not funny.
No.
There's no. Like, what's funny is watching him punch himself repeatedly in the face because he's trying to give himself a nosebleed to get out of the date. Not because that's funny. It's just nice to see him punch himself in the face.
Can't say he didn't deserve it as well. And also, his date Gertrude actually helps him when he punches himself in the face. Like, she's clearly a nice woman, and he just has no time for her whatsoever, thereby accentuating the fact he is a piece of you-know-what.
And I still don't know if we're meant to root for him now, but I think we are.
I think we are, which is crazy.
It's insane. I think he's meant to be the good guy in this situation, which is just bizarre. Anyway, he pretends to talk to the model sat next to him. Anne and Jeff see that he's there, and Anne gets jealous because she thinks that he's actually on the date with the model and not Gertrude, the kind woman who ate her dinner. Remember that part? And it offends Anne because she thinks she looks like Florence Nightingale or something. So she's like, we gotta bounce, Jeff. Let's go to the fair. Yeah, they go to the fair. They get stuck on a big swing. It starts raining. That's the fair. There's like a frame of like Hitchcock, because Hitchcock did say this is like one of those films where he was just handed a script and just pointed the camera. He didn't actually input anything.
Any story whatsoever.
Which like I can see. I can believe that. But there is that one bit where they get stuck on the swing and it does the zoom down to the floor and the zoom back. That's Hitchcock.
That's yeah.
For that
100%.
for that moment in time, Hitchcock is directing this film.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, they get soaked, and Anne wants to get Jeff off this big swing and get him somewhere warm. So we just cut to them now in Jeff's apartment. Don't know how they got down from there. I presume they didn't jump. And Anne wants Jeff to feel better, so she lights the fire. She dries herself off by the fire. So they get into something comfy. I'll make you feel better. He gets into another suit, this one looking more uncomfortable than the previous. And she's like, oh, what'll make you feel better is if you drink what's like an Irish shot. No, it's about half a glass of just straight liquor. She's like, oh, drink this and you'll feel better. And he's like, oh, but I don't drink. This lecturer once gave this lecture on alcoholics, and he squirted alcohol in an alcoholic's eye and was like, that's what alcohol does to your stomach, buddy. Was science that far off, or is that really a thing? I can't believe that that's true. I haven't actually looked it up, but anyway, this story results in Anne not listening to him and making him drink anyway. So he drinks and he handles his liquor well, so then she makes him drink again, and he doesn't handle his liquor so well. Probably the only funny moment in the film is when he just kept saying thank you in that stupid drunk voice.
Yeah.
Just to everything that she said, he just responded. That was probably the only moment where I actually laughed.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't know.
No.
At this point, Jeff is still the most likable character in the film.
Exactly. Gene Raymond is, like, at this point, easily the best thing in the film, which is not something we said before in the past with George Sanders and a couple of Hitchcock films, really, and our boy Edmund Gwen from Foreign Correspondent. But he does know how to position supporting characters in such a way that makes them stand out. Yeah, this is Jeff in this up to this point is definitely the most likable character, even though he's basically stolen his best friend's wife. and even still, he's the most likable character, which just tells you how annoying the other two are, especially his supposed best friend. But no, he does a really good job in this scene. It's just probably the only scene which is passable comedy, maybe. Would you say?
Yeah.
From start to finish. Yeah, and then after this point, then, as we mentioned before, he actually basically hires a taxi man and basically just stalks Anne, just follows her around for days on end, pretending there's a PI, as if we needed any more indication that this guy is a piece of shit, basically.
Psychotic.
Psychotic. I mean, is not the word even. But anyway, he thinks that Anne is going to visit him at work, so he runs into his own office. Doesn't realise Anne isn't in his office. She's actually in Jeff's office meeting with Jeff's parents. So he concocts a story to go in on the proviso that he's basically talking with Jeff about a case that they have together. Just to basically eavesdrop and see what the hell they're talking about. And basically then subtly tries to ruin Anne and Jeff's budding romance in front of Jeff's parents by dropping little hints that Anne isn't maybe everything she pretends to be, would you say?
Yeah, so Jeff grabs his parents and brings them into the bathroom to have a family meeting with them, which was meant to be when Hitchcock wanted to have a flushing toilet for the first time in cinema.
Yeah.
But that was against censorship. So instead it was the noise of the pipes going off instead. And he convinces his parents to give Anne another chance at Lake Placid. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think it's Lake Placid, yeah.
Yeah, which is like this lodge, retreat, snowy place where they go on holiday seemingly regularly. So they're all going to meet up there. Anyway, so David, who has been stalking Anne, tries to make another move on her, and she rejects him. So, as all good protagonists do, he continues to stalk her.
Yeah, and then Jeff and Anne go to a snowy retreat kind of cabin place together. Is it a vacation or is that Lake Placid? At this point,
I think it's Lake Placid.
Yeah,
I don't know
Lake
why
Placid.
they'd name drop Lake Placid if it wasn't, but I could be wrong.
You're probably right. So at this point, I was probably just losing the will to live. That's
Same.
information was going in one ear and out the other. But yeah, so they rock up at this cabin, and they realize that David appears out of nowhere. They realize that David's followed them there. Again, what an idiot! And he pretends to faint. Well, I'm maybe burying the lead here. He faints. And Anne and Jeff are both terribly concerned for him. So they bring him inside to one of the cabins and they feed him and they put him in warm clothes and they put him in bed, and they think they're doing such a great thing, but it becomes clear to the audience very quickly that he's pulling the whole thing. He's pretending about the whole thing.
Yeah, so our protagonist, David Smith, has stalked Anne and Jeff all the way to this snowy retreat where he has apparently been waiting there for days.
Yeah.
Which is alluded to by him being outside the whole time. And he then pretends to faint because, I don't know, he wants her to look after him. This is his plan. I don't really know what the plan is at this point. Also, I know this is just throwing a random fact in because I'd missed it. But fun fact, Hitchcock's cameo, which we skipped, which was way back when David was walking past his apartment, was actually directed by Carol Lombard. She actually directed that scene. And as a joke, she made him redo it over and over and over again just to kind of get a laugh out of the crowd and the crew. So good for her. As I said, by far the most interesting thing about this movie is just Carol Lombard. Another thing she did on this movie actually was, I don't really know the context of the quote, but there's this quote that was going around at the time that Hitchcock said actors are like cattle. And I think it got misconstrued, and I don't think Carol Lombard was misconstruing it. I think she was like kind of taking the piss out of the people who misconstrued it, because she had a stable built on set before Hitchcock got there with 3 cows in it, and one of them had her name, one of them had Robert Montgomery's name, and one of them had Jean Raymond's name on their collars. So that was pretty funny. As I said, the movie's awful. It's a bad movie. As I said, I've seen 24 Alfred Hitchcock films. This is 24th. This is the worst I've seen. I had to double check my rankings. This is last place comfortably. So yeah, I'd rather just talk about Carl Lombard personally, but we still got a whole final few sequences to get through, which even the most likable character comes off terribly.
Yeah.
So go for it.
But basically, at this point, Jeff still manages to come across like he's a chivalrous person. Anne basically keeps telling him that she has no feelings for David, that the romance is gone with him. He keeps basically sticking up for David, saying, well, just maybe you just need to see if there's something still there, and if there's not, then maybe we can get back together and we can see where this thing goes.
Proper Love Island chat.
Yeah,
Proper
exactly.
Love Island chat.
100%. Yeah, Casa Amor, is that what it is? Wherever. But so Jeff at this point is coming across like a really stand-up guy. Again, let's just ignore the fact that he's stolen his best friend's wife, but let's just ignore the fact.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'd betray David Smith in a heartbeat.
Who wouldn't? What an asshole. So eventually Anne realises that David is faking the whole thing because she basically sees through the window, I think it is. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, she sees him peeling a potato or something.
Yeah, and when she comes back in, when he hears her coming back in, he jumps back under the covers and pretends that he's still muttering under his sleep about basically about things that have happened in the past, and as if he's daydreaming about their previous relationship. She basically confronts him, and he admits to the whole thing and says that it's because he loves her so much. Yada yada yada. Again, at this point, I'm losing the will to live. So Jeff's parents, if I'm not mistaken, then turn up and some whole commotion.
You skipped the two best parts of the film. Jeff's parents show up after Anne pretends that she's having sex with Jeff through the wall to make David jealous. Yeah. And then when David comes in, our protagonist, David Smith, assaults Anne he gets her in a headlock and attacks her. Yeah, the two best scenes in the film, where she pretends to have sex with Jeff, who's in the room on the other side of her room, listening to the whole thing, kind of cheering her on, while she's pretending to have violent sex with glasses breaking and fucking cupboards breaking and all this going on so that David hears. And then David comes in
am I right in
and
saying
assaults her.
Am I right in saying, though, before she also pretends then that he's taking advantage of her, Jeff? And basically that's when David then tries to jump to her defense, which good for him, I suppose. Great, definitely good for him. But I mean, these two characters are wild.
Yeah, and we're meant to root for them. This is a comedy. And we're supposed to root for these characters. This is outrageous. It's so bad.
It's crazy.
And then Jeff, who comes in and sees David assaulting Anne, says, "Oh, I'm not going to do anything about this. I'm just going to watch." And the two of them sort of break it up, and they're like, "What?" they're kind of in disbelief. And Jeff is like, "Oh, I wouldn't blame him. You're so hot, any man would assault you to take advantage of you."
I forgot about that line. Oh my god.
Awful. Like Hitchcock, mate. I know he does some dodgy stuff in Marnie, but this is dodgy. Like this is in the early 40s, where flushing a toilet in a film is censored.
This predates Marnie.
How is this in the film?
Exactly. This predates Marnie by about 20 years. And
yeah,
I mean, Marnie has some messed up stuff in there. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil, but this is almost as bad, I would say.
Yeah, so with Jeff's inactivity and basically saying, if any man does this to you, I just gotta applaud him because you're just so gorgeous. So she dumps him when his parents come in. His parents come in to this, great to see. The dad goes, Jeff, I forbid you from marrying this woman. Like, all right, mate. Your son's not really a catch either. She dumps him anyway. They all leave. And then, of course, what happens the next day? Because it's the end of the film. David and Anne get back together.
They reconcile, all is well. The greatest love story that ever lived. Wow.
Yeah, she can't get her skis off. So he helps her get her skis off. The end.
Basically. I mean, that's the thing that gets them back together.
The ending scene.
Yeah. Oh, this is just a wild, wild film.
Obviously, this movie sucks. It's awful. It's mean-spirited. Its themes are stupid and poorly handled. Its characters are arseholes, and I don't like any of them, except for that cat who wouldn't eat the soup in Mama Lucy's, because that was a good cat.
That was.
Yeah. Basically, David's like, oh my god, even the cat won't eat the soup. And they just cut to this cat who is refusing to eat the soup. Hope that cat got paid well, because it deserves better than this. And God, yeah, this film's awful. Hitchcock's direction, other than literally one singular frame, is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
None of his signatures are anywhere here. The writing is terrible. The casting is terrible. Like, don't get me wrong, Carole Lombard is an incredible actress, and before this, she had so many amazing movies. This movie sucks. It's awful.
Apparently, Hitchcock wanted Cary Grant to play David Smith, and I'm really glad that didn't happen, because I don't think even Cary Grant could have saved this.
Yeah, to be honest, like, Cary Grant's great and all. As a matter of fact, genuinely, if Cary Grant was David Smith and William Wyler or Frank Capra directed this, totally different movie.
Very, very different. Even Billy Wilder.
You don't need to replace Carole Lombard. She could work well with a better director and a better lead actor.
Yeah, Capra, William Wyler, Ernst Lubitsch, Billy Wilder, they all would have done a better job. Probably even names I'm forgetting. Hitchcock is just not. He just wasn't the man for this film. He just wasn't.
No, and that's why he distanced himself from it as much as he seemingly could after the fact. Shane, what did you think of this film?
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you listen to the whole episode. It's a terrible film. It's his worst film that I've seen up to now. Might be his worst film of all time. I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but it's definitely the worst film I've seen.
I'm sure there's a couple of silents that probably are worse than this. That's the only thing I can think of.
But definitely, again, approaching 20 films thereabouts, and it's by a distance the worst Hitchcock film I've seen up to this point. Again, he just wasn't the right person for the story, because it's a funny enough premise if you think about it. So a more suitable director would have gotten more out of this, but he just wasn't the right man. So I think I'm almost being generous when I say I've given it 2 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, I gave it 1.5 star out of 5. I thought this was an abomination of a film. I hated it so much. Besides that cat and Jeff saying thank you in a silly drunk voice, and that one singular frame where we zoom down on the crowd, everything else here is absolute garbage, and I hate it. I hate this film with a passion. I will probably never rewatch it, ever. It sucks. It sucks so bad, and I'm so glad that I have gotten this out of the way, because, like, you know, one day maybe I'll hopefully have seen every Hitchcock film ever made, and it's great to get something like this out of the way early.
It's always great, yeah. It was the same with certain directors. We'll come on to it, I'm sure, but yeah, you just know kind of when you research things that you kind of know that it's not going to be your bag, but you're still really hoping that it might be more than you expect, but this definitely was not.
No. Also, if anybody wants to recommend anything after our Hitchcock 40s arc, do it whenever you want. If you want to do it on this episode or a future episode, whatever ideas you can kind of come up with, feel free to send them down, because, like, we're not really tied to much of a list here. I don't want to plan too far ahead. The 40s Hitchcock will do it for the first sort of 12 episodes, and then we'll see where it takes us. Whatever's the best idea that we can think of, or the best idea in the comments, is what we'll do.
And also, I don't want to just rewatch a film or a director that I've seen before necessarily. Look, I'd love to go back and revisit Billy Wilder's one of my favourite directors of all time. I'd love to go back and revisit his films, but again, I've seen them all, so I would like to use this podcast, this platform, as a chance to see new things, really.
Yeah, speaking of which, just on seeing new films and stuff, I have started, obviously this is coming out way after I've started doing this, so hey, maybe you already know about this, but I have started doing a film of the day on our Twitter and our Instagram. It's on our Instagram stories, and then it's just a Twitter post. I'm just kind of picking them at random, to be honest, just any film pre-1970 for now that I've seen that I think is worth a watch. I'm just sticking up there, and yeah, no rhyme or reason to it. It's just a random recommendation. You don't have to go and watch every single one of them, but I don't know, if a title or an image comes up that interests you, feel free to check it out. So our Instagram is Golden Hour Film Pod. Our Twitter is at GH Film Pod. Our TikTok, because we're down with the kids, is the Golden Hour Film Podcast. And our YouTube channel is just called the Golden Hour Film Podcast if you're listening to this on Spotify. You can find me and Shane on multiple social medias. I am Harry Bailey 888 on Instagram, and I think I'm just Harry Bailey on Letterboxd. What is my username on Letterboxd? Shane, you say yours whilst I'm trying to think. My Twitter is at Harold Can't Tweet. Let me try to find my Letterboxd.
My Twitter is smull96. My letterbox is smull. And my Instagram, actually, I'm not sure about my Instagram. Maybe Shane Mull. I can't be too sure. Let me check.
I think your Instagram's Shane Mull 96.
Shane Mull 96. Shane Mull 96.
I think my letterbox is Harry Bailey. I don't know if there's a number after it. It's either Harry Bailey or Harry Bailey 00 or Harry Bailey 8 or Harry Bailey 888. I should have come prepared with this, and I can't find it right now. But just trust me, it's one of those.
Your letterboxd is Harry Bailey 888.
There you go. So it's the same as my Instagram. Harry Bailey 888 on Instagram, Harry Bailey 888 on Letterboxd, and Harold Can't Tweet on the Twitter. Thank you so much, guys. We will see you in this context next week. So throw all the comments that you have for us. I don't know, if we don't answer them next week, it'll be the week after, but we'll be replying to everything in the comments as well. Anyway, and then we'll just kind of expand on our answers on future episodes of the podcast. I've been Harry Bailey. Thank you very much.
I've been Shane Mulvaney. Thank you very much.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you, everyone.
Bye.